Yeah,
Yeah.
I think
Go.
so. Hello, everyone. My name's Elena Zeppel. I am the broadband manager under the Wyoming Business Council for the state of Wyoming. Welcome to all of you to the webinar for the Connect Wyoming ARPA CPF program. At long last, we're in the final stretches of this. I want to take this time to thank all of you who are joining us today, but especially to the providers for your patience as we have worked through this, your participation with the mapping portion and providing feedback for us. We know the time that it takes and the manpower, and we're forever grateful for that. Especially in the mapping and through the mapping challenge that you had done for us. We believe that we have a good map. Perfect, we don't believe that. But as we proceed, I think our future maps will get better and better as we go along with your help. And so we really think that this will help us to move into the bead better prepared than we have been before. So with that, again, I am thanking you for that. Then we have some things we want you to keep in mind as we move through today. And David, can you go back to the slide on that? Will you please put yourself on mute if you haven't already? This webinar is being recorded. That notice came out earlier. We will share the recording and the slide deck with all the registrants after the webinar. Please add your questions to the Q&A section, which on mine is at the very bottom, not the chat section, and we will answer them during the Q&A session at the end. To get in touch with us, you can email us either at the broadband office at wyo.gov or through the Wyoming ISP coordinator at lightboxre.com. More technical questions on the mapping should go to the Lightbox. Today's presentation will be given by David Johnson. David is our consultant, technical person that we have hired from within the state, and Robert Shingle is joining us from Lightbox. With those very brief introductions, David, if you will continue with the presentation.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Elena. And I think I certainly echo what Elena stated as far as the thank yous go. You've been a tremendous group of folks to work with throughout this process. I'll admittedly say that I had no idea what went into building the maps and the actual application program up front, but it has been a very rewarding journey to get us to this point. And again, I certainly echo what Elena had said, and also value the partnership with Lightbox that has got us to this point as well. So just a couple of quick things here on the agenda. Elena already went through the thank you portion of it. I'll go through some reminders, talk about the updated program timeline. Robert Shingle from Lightbox will walk us through the map updates, some changes that are made to the map, release date, those types of things. I will walk you through the application system overview. This is built in Salesforce by, again, a partner that has come on with the project, Wave, that will be supporting us through the application process. We'll talk about some support at the end, and then again, we'll answer the Q&A at the end of the call as well. So with that being said, I'll just start in on the reminders. The Business Council and Lightbox will be releasing the public and grant application challenge maps. This says the week of July 17th through the 21st, but I'll caveat that to say that we are going to release your credentials next week to get into the application system, but the maps will not be published until the actual release date of the application, and I'll confirm that date with you in just a minute. So the maps will be accessible just like they are today through the Connect Wyoming site. And the application map tool, you will continue to use the credentials that you have used up to this point for the access to that map. Now, again, I just want to send out a reminder that the credentials for the map itself are provided through Lightbox. So if you've had credentials and there's an issue with that, then you can email the ISP coordinator at the Lightbox address that Elena had identified. If you're new to the program, your credentials have to be acknowledged first by the business council. So if you reference the guidelines document that is posted online, it tells you where to email for those credentials to the map and also the credentials into the application system. So again, as it stands right now, your credentials for the application system, for those of you that were credentialed into the map already, will be distributed next week. The target date is to have those out to you by the end of the day on Wednesday. But in all likelihood, there could be a few stragglers that come across on Thursday morning as well. So that's what you would expect. If you do not see those credentials by Friday morning, please email us at the broadband office so that we can investigate where your credentials are at. As far as the timeline goes, just an update as to where we're at. We are still finishing the quality assurance testing on the map and also the application system itself. With that being said, the intention is to launch the application for all of you officially at 8 a.m. on Monday, the 24th. And that application period will run through 5 p.m. on August 22nd. You will, as soon as you receive your credentials next week, you will have the ability to access the application system so that you can poke around in there. Obviously, you won't be able to pull data down from the map to build into your application, but there are some uploads that you could do in advance in building some drafts, things that'll be obvious as we go through the application presentation here in just a little bit. The application challenge period right now would be scheduled for that should say August 22nd through let me correct myself. There's a 30-day period after the application period that the Business Council will be evaluating the applications and posting those online. And I'll talk about that again in another minute. The application challenge period will be at the end of that period. Right now, that's scheduled for September 22nd through October 5th. That'll be your opportunity to review the applications that are posted on the map and post challenges if you feel it's appropriate to do so. After that period, the Business Council again will evaluate the challenges and communicate to all of you as to what the outcome of those challenges are. At the end of that period, the Business Council will go into the award and contract phase. We anticipate that will take approximately 30 days, and then the construction and I guess the final engineering piece of it will begin the first part of December. And as it's been articulated in the guidelines document, you must complete the project and all of the funding must be submitted and paid back to you by that December 31st of 26 timeframe. So we would really anticipate that you would finish your projects in that September of 2026 timeframe. Get your expenses submitted so that we can meet the final dates as well. With that, I will turn it over to Robert Shingle with Lightbox, and he'll walk us through the mapping updates.
Thank you, Dave. Hello, everyone. Dave, can you just put the presentation on for 1 second? There's just some slides we're going to go through about the map. Yeah, and then just go to the slide right after you left off on. And next slide. Perfect. So in terms of updates to expect, as David and Elena mentioned, next slide, please. Yep, perfect. So this portion of the webinar is to review what has happened to the map, to set expectations for what you should expect to see on Monday, July the 24th. In terms of some of the inputs that we were working with, again, thank you to all the ISPs that submitted challenge data, whether they were challenging how their data was represented on the map, or you were challenging other markets within the state of Wyoming. So you should expect to see changes to the serviceability values that were assigned to different locations. As some as you noted, there was some duplicates. We've removed as many of those as we could detect within the maps, made some additional improvements, and when we release the next round of maps, the state has asked us to add the RDOF awarded areas as a context layer to support you in your application development. Next slide, please. Thank you. So for some of you, this might be a little bit of a refresher from what we discussed in a past webinar. If you're new to the process, this is an overview of the maps, and the state will be providing you a document that explains in a lot of detail in terms of how to make effective use of the maps. So when you go into the map itself, you will find that there's a legend. You'll find that there's some key data sets that are being promoted on the maps. So locations, these are different addresses within the state. They have been designated with a level of serviceability based on their speed, whether it's served, underserved, or unserved. And then there are a variety of federal funding data sets that have been added to the map, whether from USAC, Reconnect, or RDOF, for you to make use of when doing your application analysis. Next slide, please. Thank you. For those that have not used the map for the first time, there is a description that accompanies the map that explains what its purpose is and an explanation of different features that you can find on the map. This is your go-to area to understand how to make the most effective use of the map. What's also important is with each version of the map that is promoted to you, the end user, we update the date stamp that's on the bottom of the map. So if you were to log in today, you would still see a date that reflects April of this year. So when you log in on the 24th, you'll see a date that reflects that date, and that will give you the assurance that this the data is as up to date as possible based on the changes that the state has directed Lightbox to make. Next slide, please. Perfect. We're articulating here the business rules that are used to calculate serviceability based on the speeds that were provided by ISPs as part of their submission or through the challenge process. Next slide, please. And the other thing, back one, please. Sorry, forward one. Yep, there we go. The other thing is that there's a search bar at the top left-hand side of the map. So if you want to look for a specific address, or you're looking for a specific county, tribal land, House district, Senate district, this is a way to navigate the map. So if you're going in to investigate something, use the address piece. If you're looking to understand the statistics at a boundary level, so at a county level, you could use this to find it if you're not aware of where that area is located. Next slide, please. With each, and again, these numbers will be updated when the map is refreshed, but the county boundaries, the tribal boundaries, the House district, and the Senate districts will all have their statistics refreshed. If you take a step back from the snapshot, what you can see here is we are indicating how many individual unique locations there are for served, underserved, or unserved, and what the total is, and then have calculated what percent is available of that for funding based on the underserved and unserved locations. And then, as many of you know, each county or area can be downloaded as a CSV file for you to take away and look at that data, filter down that data within your own organizations. Next slide, please. Perfect. Again, there's a download link on each CSV. This information will not be refreshed until the maps are released on the 24th. So if you were going to the maps right now, that would show you what data was released to kick off the challenge process. But if you want to practice and kind of just familiarize yourself with what that information looks like, please go ahead and do that. Next slide, please. Okay, and the other thing is that there's going to be different icons that you can find within the map. So if you do not wish to download information at a county level, but prefer something a little more bite-sized and want to get down into a neighborhood and select a few or a few hundred addresses, there is a tool called Eligible Locations, and you can use that to select information off the map and then download that. Everything I'm showing you right now to date, I'll show you in the demo that's coming up in a few minutes. Just trying to familiarize yourself with the environment that you make use of. Okay, when you're inside the Select Eligible Locations tool, you would select it. There's multiple ways to make a selection. You can select by drawing a polygon or something called a lasso, which is really just a custom delineation around the points. And again, you can take that away, that information via CSV file. Okay, next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay, once you've exported the CSV file, you'll see a variety of information, both the full address information, the serviceability that's assigned to that, different information about the address that's parsed out, but also some information, it's a business, it's residential, there's land use information. We've added flags, whether it intersects with a federal government program, as well as the coordinates, so that you can map this information within your own spatial systems, whether it's SQL Server, a GIS system like QGIS. Next slide, please. And the last item is that, as some of you may know, a number of fields were added for the challenge process. This was utilized for the workflow that just completed, which is challenging the map and having the serviceability values updated. So just to make it clear here, these fields do not need to be populated as part of the phase that you are now entering, which is the application phase. These fields, will be used when you're challenging the applications themselves in terms of providing evidence that some or all of the locations, you have a different idea of what's happening there context-wise. So again, these fields come along with the exports that you will have, but you don't need to fill them in for this phase that you're entering right now. Last one, in terms of supporting your efforts to put together your documentation for the state, please note that if you do not have a map available to you, that there is a print map function that is embedded within the map. So if you go into your market of choosing and you want to make different pictures, whether via PDF, JPEG, PNG, things of that nature, if that's important for you to put together and to tell that story about the market that you're working on, please note that that capability exists within the map, so that you can use that as part of your documentation to the state. Okay, and this is just an example what it would look like when making a PDF. Again, it could be a JPEG, a PNG. There's multiple different flavors, if you will, different outputs that will meet your needs. Okay, that takes us to the demo phase. So Dave, if you wouldn't mind just stopping the demo, and then I'll share my screen. Okay, Dave, can you confirm that you can see the map on my screen?
I can.
Perfect, thank you for that. So everyone, this is the map. And again, if you've seen this for the first time, you will know that you're on the right map because it's called the Wyoming Broadband Grant Application / Challenge Tool. And as we saw in the previous phase, we used it from a challenge perspective to challenge the map. In this case, it will also be used to drive the application / application challenge process. So just make sure this is the right title when you're logging in. And you can see a number of different artifacts here on the left-hand side. We affectionately call this the map description area. This is your high-level information. So your legend, statewide statistics. Again, this will change when we launch July 24th. High-level description of the map with high-level business rules, explanation of what different tools do. And then last but not least at the bottom here, this is really important for you to just have your grounding. Am I using the latest data? You should expect to see that this date changes from April 13th to July the 24th. when it is released in approximately a week's plus time. Okay. As we saw with the slides that Dave was going through, there's different ways to search the map. And there's a number of different tools up here, which we'll get to in 1 second. If I click on the map, each of these boundaries has different statistics that are assigned to it. So if you're looking for a county level, you can click around. Each one has a download link. So depending on where you are located or operate within Wyoming, or where you're going to next in terms of market expansion, please note, you can download as many counties that are of interest to you. If I start zooming into the map, let me just get rid of this for a second. I'm just going to turn on this layer list here. So as I'm zooming in, one thing I want to make mention of, anything that's grayed out, it has been specifically turned off because from a zoom level perspective, it's just too much information to show at once. But as you zoom into the map, what you should expect to see is that different things are turning on and off as you get closer. So as you can see, the locations have been enabled now. I'll keep going a little bit closer. And this is showing you all the locations with their representative building footprints. If I click on one of these buildings, it's going to give you information about what is that address, what is its serviceability. This information is identical to what you are exporting that we saw in the CSV file. And again, if there was any flags about it cross-referencing with different government programs, you would see that articulated as well. And if I go here to the select eligible features, if you click this little button here, there are 3 different ways to select information off the map. I'm going to select the lasso. I'm just going to come in and draw a quick circle or boundary around this area. We see that 7 locations have been selected. And if you've gone through the experience before, or you had the state's map documentation in front of you, the next step would be to view this information in an attribute table. You can see here in the bottom left-hand corner that there's 7 locations. 7 locations have been selected. I'm going to go to here to options and select this information to be exported. So whether you're selecting 5 addresses, 100 addresses, 1,000 addresses, this is a mechanism to do this. Or as we saw in the previous instance, you would just download the entire county because you know what you're going after. And if we just open these up, we can see here that full address information, serviceability, a unique ID, different information about the address itself, whether it's residential or business, any land use information that's known about it. Is it associated with a community anchor institution? Is it associated with a federal program? As well as the latitude and longitude. And again, as I mentioned, these fields will come along for the ride, but should remain empty through this phase. We'll tap into these when we're going through the challenge phase with the applications right after. Okay. And then there's other ways you can turn on satellite imagery. You can print the map here. These are all different things that you can do. So Dave, I'm going to stop sharing now and hand it back to you.
Yeah, thank you for that demonstration, Robert. It's always appreciated your knowledge of that mapping system and how to maneuver in it. And just as another reminder, as we go through this process, if you have questions on how to utilize the map, those are identified in the Wyoming Grant Application Tool Training Guide that is posted on the Connect Wyoming site. And you can reach out to the Lightbox ISP coordinator to help you navigate the map as well. If you need time with them individually, please reach out to them via email and schedule an appropriate training session for you or your team. So with that being said, I am going to walk us through the application system itself. And again, just as a reminder, this will be, the link to this will be posted on the Connect Wyoming website as well. And again, we will be distributing those credentials sometime mid next week as well. So as you get into the system, there's a couple of different ways to log in. Primarily, there's a login on the right-hand side of the screen where you will be presented the actual login page. So your username, password will be entered at this location. If again, there are password challenges, once you receive your credentials, there will be a link for you to reset that password as well. Once you log into the system, you will see a summary of the applications by the name and the status of those applications. So primarily ones that you've created as drafts, ones that have been submitted, or ones that have been rejected for some reason. From this point, it is really just a summary. You want to click on the proceed to application, and that'll take you to the actual, to give you the ability to actually get into the applications that you have in there, with the caveat that you will not be able to access an application after it has been submitted. So once that is done, we will be communicating with you as to if you need to make changes to that application, it was submitted before its time. We will establish a communication path with you via confirmation email that you will receive as to how to contact us to put it back into the draft stage if that's what's necessary. Again, if something is in a rejected stage, you will get notification of that as well. And there will be reasons why it was rejected and contact information for you to reach out to us to resolve that as well. So as stated on here, there's radio buttons on the left-hand side of your application list. That is how you choose the application that you want to work on or start a new application. The very first page that you will be presented is the project name page. So just a reminder that these applications will be posted for the public view. So you want to use a recognizable name for the residents in those areas, and also something that will be recognized easily by the leaders in those counties as well that may be looking at the applications in those areas. The first page is really the program qualification details. And from this point forward, pretty much everything that you see in here has been identified in the guidelines document with a very few exceptions. So if you've read through those guidelines documents, which I know the majority of you have done because we've received some feedback, mostly positive, and again, thank you for that as well. But those things have been identified in that guidelines document. So again, your familiarity with those should be fairly good at this point. So this is really just to kind of walk you through how to manage that data. So in this case, as you go through here, there's a couple of key things to point out. The map submission, the project completion date, the FCC provider ID. If you don't have a provider ID already, please start working on that, as you will be required to provide that if you are awarded during the reporting phase. And it is taking them a while to do that. So if you don't have a provider ID, you can answer no to this question, but we would encourage you to begin that process as it takes a while. You will detail your participation in the ACP program here. Again, these fields are limited as far as the narrative goes. We encourage you to provide that in a Word document and upload it in here as well. Page 2 is the project area statistics. This is the information that you will be pulling down from the map. So you will enter the number of residential, business, and community anchor support institutions in these sections, and what percent is unserved and underserved as they are identified on the map. If there's no businesses or CAI locations, you would enter 0 in there. I will also tell you that each one of these fields requires a positive entry. So if you enter 100%, For unserved, you must still enter 0 in the underserved category. The facilities summary, this is really, if you've entered business or CAI information on the previous screen, you must detail that here. It will come from the information that you have pulled down from the map, with the exception of two things. If there is a community anchor institution or a community support building, say like a senior center, that was not identified correctly on the map, you will have the ability to add it here so that we can again perfect the map, but consider it in your application. And then we would ask that you add the business name or the organization if it's known. It's not produced in the map data, but if you know the name of that organization, please include that as well. The project affiliation piece, as you saw in the guidelines document, if the project is affiliated with a local government, a nonprofit, or cooperative, you're building something with the cooperation of the county. County funding is a part of your application. That's where you would enter that information here. If you're an electrical co-op or a telecom co-op that is applying as well, you would identify that here and also detail the affiliation or the, how the two entities are working together to build the application and support it financially as well. So again, at this point, we would encourage you to upload any letters of support, the financial details, those types of things that are associated with the project. Next is the technology and the speed portion of it. Again, the serving technology, whether it's fiber, you're using licensed fixed wireless or a hybrid of fiber and licensed fixed wireless, that's where you would enter the information here. The speed details, and as far as this goes, the bottom section is to describe the proposed infrastructure only if it is something other than fiber. There's another section in the application where you will detail the infrastructure if it is a fiber-based product. Next is the speed category. We need to know what portion or that the proposed solution exceeds 100 megabits symmetrical. If not, you would enter that information here as well. But we want to know what the upload and download speed is offered to the maximum speed that will be offered to the residential consumers in the project area. Page 7, this is really in two parts. There's the infrastructure part of it, and then there's the cost part of it. So first of all, on the infrastructure part of it, specifically to fiber miles, we would ask as part of the application, and this goes on to the reporting piece as well, that you enter your mainline fiber miles. And that would include if you're placing new middle mile, not using existing, that would go in your mainline fiber miles. And then the drop miles needs to be calculated to the best of your ability and entered in here as well. The total project miles are calculated automatically based on your entry. This is one of the most important parts, so I would ask that you pay a great deal of attention here into the cost portion of this. The projected costs in each one of these categories needs to be detailed on this section. We need to have a good idea as to, if you are awarded, what will be submitted for each of the categories as it was identified in the guidelines document. There are specific milestones within the project after the award that you can request funding reimbursement. So again, we would expect those to match as we move through that portion of it as well. As far as the broadband infrastructure description, again, very detailed. The equipment type, the amount of equipment that is being deployed, include the details on the cost portion of it. And lastly, we would ask again that you identify in your description what the initial speeds will be achieved on your deployment. Page 8 is really the financial piece of this as far as the matching funds go. So your total project costs will be calculated from what your entries were on page 7 and identified in here on the top left-hand section. What you will be entering is your cash match to calculate your percentage. So it seemed to be, based on the feedback that we received, easier for the provider instead of utilizing a percentage to enter the dollar amount. So then that cash match percentage will be calculated for you automatically. And that amount will drop down based on the maximum grant amount based on that calculation. The requested grant amount is a positive entry that must be done by you. So for instance, if you're receiving a financial contribution from a municipality, you would take that off of what your maximum grant amount is calculated and enter that difference here. So for instance, if your maximum grant calculates out to 200,000 and you're receiving $100,000 from the county, the $100,000 is what you would enter in the requested grant amount field. Page 9 is the project administration details. A number of you had identified that, you know, some of the projects had already, you've secured right away for, that you had the required permits for. Those were put on hold based on when the previous Connect Wyoming process was put on hold. This is where you would identify and articulate in detail what permits that you have received, what right of way you have obtained, those types of things. This is also where you will detail your middle mile infrastructure that will support the project. So as it's described on here, if you answer yes, that you will be using existing middle mile, you would identify that support here. If no, the details of the middle mile proposed to support your project in the broadband infrastructure description on page 7 is where you would identify that. The project summary, again, this is important. This should be an executive summary. This is what will be posted to the public facing map. You are limited to 1,000 words in this field. You can also upload that, but again, you are limited to 1,000 words in that field. And again, the reminder is that this is what will be posted on the public map and also the application challenge map, so that others can view that description of your project as they're considering possible challenges to that as well. Page 11 is really the mapping piece of it. As Robert showed, you will have the ability to print a PDF from the actual tool itself. That's what you would upload here. This is where you would also upload your CSV file of the addresses that are included in your application. So again, very important that you retain the format that comes with the download so that we can easily confirm those locations in your application. This is the first reminder of many as I go through the end of this, that all files must be uploaded before you submit your application. You will not have the ability to upload files after an application is submitted. So keep that in mind, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in just a minute. Your service offerings, again, this is important to the application as well. One-time charge for equipment and installation of a typical residential service is what goes in that very first upper left-hand box. And then you can describe what goes into that as well. If this is for the typical residential service. If you're providing in your description what would be offered to a business service, because that is different, we would ask that you describe that in the block as well. Your service offerings, we put 5 different sections in here. If you have 3, fill out 3. You must have at least 1 positive entry in the service offerings, and that should be identified as a low cost service option for qualified consumers, sufficient for a household with multiple users to simultaneously telework and engage in remote learning. This is a description that is similar to what is in the ACP guidelines as well, for those of you that already participate in that program. So you would have a low cost offering in here. You would identify your middle and maximum offerings in here as well. If you have more than 5 of those offerings, we would just ask that you note that in the one-time charges description as well. On page 13, this is where you articulate your applicant experience, describe your experience as a provider, the available resources to complete the project, and really what your operating structure is to maintain the 15 and 20-year obligation of the system that's identified in the guidelines document as well. Page 14 is where you would upload your financials. And again, the time frame for that is we would ask that you upload your 2020 through 2022. If 2022 is not complete, please upload your 2019, as we require 3 years of those financials for review. Page 15 is where you will identify your state or your federal and state funding for broadband projects and obligations from 1/1 of 2020 to present. And I will just caveat that to say, if you've received a reconnect or an RDOF award where your build time may be past today's present date, you need to identify those as well. We have them identified in the map. We just need to confirm, based on what your input is, that we have those things mapped correctly and we're not missing anything that could result in a challenge as well. So just want to make sure that that obligation is clear on what's expected here. Page 16, again, this is where you will start receiving the reminders. You have the ability to upload your documents at this point. This is just a reminder that, have you done it? And there's another screen that I'll show you in a minute that gives you the ability to upload those documents all at once. And I'll talk about the use of that in a second as well. This screen gives you a application review, which will show you a summary of what all of your inputs were so far. The application certification page, again, this is something that's already identified in the guidelines document, so there should be no surprises here. It mirrors what's in that document as well. You are required to check all of these boxes in order to proceed with your application. Page 18, as I showed before, you have the ability to upload documents individually. So if you look at the very top left-hand section here, there is a button at the top to upload documents. It gives you the ability to see what you've uploaded, to upload documents as needed that maybe you forgot or didn't, or just were saving to the end to upload all at once. This is a list on here of the documents that we feel should be uploaded to the application. So please pay close attention to this portion of it as well. Lastly, the signature and submittal portion of it, I will tell you that the sign by, this is where you can upload a signature into here, but the sign by and the date stamp will populate automatically based on who logged into the system. So with that being said, we have about 15 minutes left for Q&A, and I believe that there are some questions in the chat as well, or in the Q&A section as well. So Lena, you want to tackle those?
You bet. We have 5 questions. David, between you and Robert, you can decide who is best to answer these. Our first question says, on the scalability certification, the language states certified by either manufacturer, but there is no or. Is there another certification method, perhaps a PE?
Sure. Yeah. If they have the ability to certify that the equipment that is being utilized is capable of meeting the speeds that you have identified, that would certainly be acceptable as well.
Our second question, David, for mainline versus drop miles, would distribution fiber through a neighborhood go under mainline or drop fiber?
That would be considered mainline. Drop fiber should be your distribution ped to the residence or the building.
Okay. On page 7, part 2, it mentions timelines and additional reimbursement for activities. Can you provide further detail?
Sure. If you reference the guidelines document, there are specifics in there as to what the timelines are for your reimbursements. I believe that will answer the question, but Elena, is there something else in there from a financial perspective, from the business council's processing of that you think would be appropriate?
I believe that we will probably contact individually to ask for any further information that we needed.
Okay.
Our fourth question, will any of the layers in the map, such as the R grant boundary area, be available via a URL that can be brought directly into our GIS program, the ArcGIS Pro, for editing?
Robert?
Hey, Dave. So currently that capability is turned off. I just want to kind of get a little more clear on the question. Is it related to the federal funding data that is being displayed on the map?
I will let, I don't know
Okay.
how to allow him to expand on that. So what we will do is we will send an email or post these questions with answers alongside the recording on the website.
And then Dave, let's take an action item to follow up with Jeff Jensen offline to understand the scope what he's trying to accomplish.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Thank you, Elena.
And I believe I can probably answer the last question that I have here. Will the slides be shared as well as the recording? And yes, they will. Then we had another question come in. Has the state finalized the contract for when the award is granted? Will that be something that gets circulated for review?
Sorry, go ahead, Elena.
No, you please, go ahead.
Sure. A sample of that contract is already posted on the Connect Wyoming website for your review. So you can see what is in there already. There may be some minor changes, obviously, the cost and number of units, those types of things. And there could be some additional reporting requirements that are identified in that contract. As you can imagine, Treasury has it's a little bit of a moving scale with them right now on exactly what needs to be reported. So that could be included in that as well. But really, the way that the contract reads today will likely be 95% of what will be presented to you at award time.
Then I'm going to go back to the question, Robert, we had earlier. The answer to your explanation was no, just our boundaries. Does
Okay.
that help you?
It does. So I believe what Jeff is asking is when you draw a boundary, a polygon on the map, is that information made available to the ISP? No, it's a temporary thing to just select the points. Dave, I think as we've discussed in the past, it's incumbent upon the ISPs if they want to draw. Do they need to draw a boundary on their points, Dave, as part of their submission process?
They don't need to draw the boundary. That will be done by CTC when they're evaluating the data to post it on the map. Now,
Okay.
it is certainly an option that they can send a boundary file in. We need the PDF and the CSV file are requirements. A boundary file is optional.
Okay, so just to sum up, we need the individual addresses that are taken off the map. The boundary itself right now is seen as optional. The current map does not allow you to do that. So if you do have the means, you could package up your own offering with your own boundary. But Dave, as you just mentioned, if the ISP is not, or any other parties are not able to do that, as part of the application process, it will get packaged up to a boundary because we will need to display it as an application boundary on the next iteration of the map. Is that correct?
That is 100% correct.
Okay,
yes.
perfect. And again, thank you for the question.
That is all the questions that I have in the Q&A at this time.
I think you got two more, Lena.
Oh, did they come in? Yeah.
Yep,
There they are.
you've motivated them to give you more questions.
Okay, David, this one's for you. Who will be reviewing the grant application?
So that will be the members of the broadband office and another representative from the governor's office at this point will be the ones that will be doing those reviews. We have also partnered with CTC Technologies to do some of the technical reviews as well, and also review the documents that have been sent in or uploaded for completeness as well. So we have quite a large team of folks that will be doing the reviews. Elena, anything to add to that?
Nope. Yeah, you got it all. Thank you. And the last question I have for right now is what data will be made available from an application for challenges?
So you will be able to see on the map what the polygon or boundary is of that application. So with that, you will access data from the map, just like you did in the challenge portion of the map challenge or address challenge. So you'll be able to pull down a mirror of the addresses from that polygon to submit your challenge. Robert, anything else that you would add to that?
No, that seems like a reasonable response to me, Dave.
And I had a question come in and it went away. So we'll wait a few moments. But we are nearing the end of our time together. Again, the webinar, the slides, and the questions with answers will be put under a Q&A and also posted on our website. With that, Robert or David, do you have anything you want to add before we end this session?
Robert, go ahead.
Sure. Again, thank you to everyone that is giving their valuable time for this session. Thank you for participating in the process on behalf of Lightbox, and I'll hand it back to you, Dave. Thank you.
Yeah, again, I would echo those comments and certainly appreciate all of your patience as we've worked through this. I think it's been great for the state of Wyoming to understand really where we're at as a state and as far as connectivity goes. we have a long road in front of us, not only with the CPF program, but with the BEAD program as well. Your continued participation in those programs, us helping us with accurate mapping is paramount to the success. And at the end of the day, we're here to serve the citizens of Wyoming and assure that, you know, we're utilizing these funds to provide broadband to those that are unserved and underserved today. So you are really key to the success of that, and we appreciate your participation. So with that, Elena, I'll let you close us out.
Again, we've done this a lot, but thank you. On this phone call, also, we have some members of our CTC, Mitch and Heather, who have been helping us out, and business council people, Amy Granfell. So for me, I say thank you to you also. With that, I hope you have a great weekend, and we hope that this is, there aren't too many questions when we launch, and you'll be able to access and update what you need. But please feel free to call us, or for me, email is better, and we will try to work through any problems that you might encounter. Again, appreciate everyone's time. And with that, I will end this webinar.
Thank you.